All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's session, which is the counselor leader's role in supporting comprehensive school counseling. We are joined today by Rebekah Frazer and Michelle Clarke from the Department of Education. And this session is really geared toward those in counselor leadership positions, whether that be at the district or building level. So we've been receiving some questions from people in these positions who are oftentimes, the lone person in that position, and they want more support, more information around, what is their actual role when it comes to comprehensive school counseling. So we're excited to have Michelle and Rebekah share some things with us today. And then at the end of today's session, I will also give you some info about some offerings for next year, which will be kind of a continuation of this topic, and it will be a year-long series for counselor leaders. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and Rebekah, Michelle, if you want to take it away, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us, and to Amanda and Keep Indiana Learning for organizing this. Can everyone see my screen now, the presentation okay? All right, perfect. So we'll go ahead and dive right in here. As Amanda did say, the link to the slides is in the chat if you want to follow along directly with us as well. So we'll let Michelle kick it off for us here and kind of introducing what we're going to talk about today a little bit.
Yeah, so again, my name is Michelle Clarke, and I'm the director of the Student School Family Engagement team at the department. But I am a former school counselor, so I actually, prior to having this role, I was the school counseling specialist. And then prior to that, I actually worked at Noblesville High School as the department chair for the school counseling team. So I have definitely had some experience as not only a school counselor, but a school counselor leader. And so now I kind of lead from the state level and look at issues and things from more of a macro viewpoint. But I've also been in your shoes, working to lead a high school, which is a large feat in itself because there's so many moving parts when you work as a leader in school counseling. And one thing I did want to mention, I think it's important to kind of recognize, I think sometimes we don't do it enough as school counselors, but when I was at a conference in February, I listened to another school counselor leader who made a valid point that said, in education, there's a direct route to leadership. I mean, you become a teacher, then you can maybe go back and get your admin license, and you might be an assistant principal, a principal, maybe even a superintendent. But when you're in a school counseling position, there's really no way to leverage being a leader in this space. And so I think that's definitely something that our profession needs to work on, because not everybody wants to lead in that aspect maybe, but there isn't much way to kind of rise above. So taking on a leadership position within your school, or even just in your department, taking a central office position, we need to have more of those so that the school counselors can really kind of show their leadership skills, because we do have our master's degree, and I think it's important to recognize. So anyways, I'm going off on my soapbox, but anyways, I'll let Rebekah introduce herself.
Sure. And looking through who's here with us, I saw some familiar names and faces, so you've probably heard our little spiel before. Yeah. But if you haven't met Rebekah Frazer, I am now the school counseling specialist for the Department of Ed. I filled the amazing shoes of Michelle, was in that role prior to moving up in our department. So I'm very fortunate to work with an amazing team at the Department of Ed, and bring some experience myself as a former school counselor. Most of my career was in the high school setting, but I've been in a school counseling role for 15 years. As Michelle had mentioned before, as a school counseling leader, I did go into a charter school that never had a counselor before in their building ever. And so that was a great opportunity for me to really start from scratch and take that leadership role and really see where, as a school counselor, we can make such huge impacts on big system changes and structures for our students. So that is something I'm excited to continue to help support you now in doing that in your buildings and in your roles in your communities. In addition to that, I also have mental health experience. I actually started in juvenile corrections, and Michelle and I actually crossed paths. We did our LMHC together through Butler during the pandemic, a crazy time, believe it or not. But we know that our student needs are rising more than ever, and you as school counseling leaders really do have an impact on those big systems that can help support not only the school counselors that you lead, but ultimately the students and the families you serve. So we're excited that you're with us today. So a little bit about what we're going to cover, but before we dive into that, we really kind of want to see if you feel comfortable putting in the chat, what is your role? We'd like to hear where you're coming from, or what role that you're serving in, because we know, as Michelle mentioned, these opportunities in every district looks a little bit different in how they handle school counseling leadership and these student services roles. So just take a second and pop into the chat and let us know who we have with us. Director of Student Services, awesome. And I know, Jen, not to throw you out under the bus, I know that's a new role for your district. And I know that I feel like these are new roles sometimes coming on too. So maybe you're still building out your title and what you're doing, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Sam, welcome. All right, well, while we're finishing up, just again, you can continue to add your roles into the chat. We'll dive in a little bit to the rest of our session agenda today. We are going to talk more about the why of comprehensive school counseling and really what that means. Even for us as school counselors, sometimes I think we get a little bit lost in those words and titles and things. So we're going to talk about what that can really mean for your school. Another piece that I feel like can be a little bit overwhelming and challenging is talking about data, those best practices, and gathering and using and analyzing your data. We know that, especially as the years have went on, school counselors have so much on their plate. So we want to make sure that you're using your time the best that you can, and leaning out to those that can help you. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the importance of building that awareness with your administration. Again, building those relationships, being vocal about what school counselors really are doing. And I know that those conversations can be tricky, but I think we have some great speaking points and opportunities today to share with you to hopefully help that conversation and that relationship be more a positive one. All right, so we'll dive right into the why of a comprehensive school counseling program. This quote is directly from ASCA, and I do want us to take some time. I know it can be a little cheesy, but to read it together, because I feel like this is such a powerful statement from ASCA about what school counselors should do. School counseling programs are collaborative efforts benefiting students, parents, teachers, administration, and the overall community. School counseling programs should be an integral part of students' daily educational environment, and school counselors should be partners in student achievement. So we do deserve that voice at the table. But school counseling programs are more, I think, just in the last few years than just reacting to student needs, where I feel like we've had that unfortunate just biases or mindset. In creation of the ASCA national model, the following components were an integral part of comprehensive school counseling programs that should be based on data-informed decision-making, should be delivered to all students systematically, including a developmentally appropriate curriculum focused on the mindsets and behaviors of all students, that what their needs are for post-secondary readiness and success. We also hope that comprehensive school counseling programs can close those achievement and opportunity gaps, which we are seeing those still rising from the pandemic, unfortunately. We also hope that they result in improved student achievement, attendance, and discipline, which that is usually a huge selling point for most administrators and school systems, because we know that there are definite challenges there. So now we'll shift. I'll have Michelle explain a little bit more about the national model and kind of how that led into our history of transitioning to our new Carrying the Torch initiative.
Awesome. So like Rebekah said, oftentimes there's kind of the question of like, well, what do school counselors do, or how are students different as a result of the school counseling program or a school counselor as an individual? And so to help answer that question, ASCA came up with and created the national model, which is a framework for data-informed school counseling programs. So Indiana wanted to also kind of replicate that, and based off the ASCA national model, we created the Indiana model for comprehensive school counseling. So again, it is very much in sync with ASCA. We actually just got off a phone call today with the American School Counseling Association because we're trying to get reciprocity for schools that complete our Carrying the Torch to Student Success program, gold level for them to also be considered RAMP, which is a recognized ASCA model school. So it's a national recognition. Because we realize that we need to start showing what our school counseling programs are doing for our students and the positive outcomes that come as a result. But we need to be data driven when we're thinking about that, and less, reactive in our departments. And so in 2017, this was before I actually came. Actually, Amanda might have been at the lead during that time, but they partnered with Butler University to do a study on the effectiveness of the current Gold Star Award, which was our old model or old award. It wasn't the model, but they found, the study through Butler found that there was really no specific evidence that being a Gold Star school had any significant impact on student outcomes. And so in August of 2019 at the DOE, we created an advisory council to come together to rewrite the program to be more aligned with the ASCA RAMP model, and then also more aligned with the state initiatives at the time. And now, even since 2019, the state initiatives have even evolved and changed since then. So we've kept up with that throughout this process. And then this fall, and it really did take 3 years because the pandemic kind of put a damper on some of the work that we were moving forward, but it also really wasn't the right time. But I'm proud to say that this fall we released the new Indiana model for comprehensive school counseling that really has all the components of RAMP, but also some additional components that are DOE or Indiana specific. Then throughout that, we've also had the ability to use some ESSER funds to hire some technical assistants to create a platform. And then we also released a grant. When was that? No, I didn't remember.
December.
Recently. My brain is like overload on the grant space. But we're excited that schools have the opportunity now to really shift their focus to comprehensive school counseling, and that it is recognized at the state level. So.
All right, let me switch your slide here.
Yep. And when you think about, as a leader in school counseling, sometimes, and I even find it hard myself as a state leader to explain, like, what is a comprehensive school counseling program? And it's really important to understand that it really does impact a lot of stakeholders in your school system. So it's not just the school counseling program, but it's how the program works with many different parts of the school. And so just starting with the students, obviously we are an integral part of what happens with our students' futures. So really making sure that students are the focus of our programming in all sides. Parents really enhances the opportunity to be more transparent. And I think that that's really important in today's climate. There's a lot of, I don't mean to be negative, but there are some folks that are kind of questioning, like, what does the school counselor do? How are they interacting with my student? And a lot of that is just needing to be more transparent and communicative with families. Teachers, it provides us an opportunity to be more collaborative. So, ensuring that students are not just getting our counseling services when they're with us one-on-one, but also in the classroom. Obviously, for counselors, it provides us a specific role of what exactly our role is for the school, how we fit into other, just other things that are going on, school improvement goals, et cetera. It clarifies to administrators the type of activities that we should be doing as a school counselor. I mean, I think, we all understand that sometimes our role is kind of a catch-all, and it's like, oh, the school counselor doesn't have a class, so they can just do X, Y, and Z. But really, I mean, even when you look at some of the things that are mandated from the department, I mean, our plates are full. So this just clarifies the types of activities that we should be using our degree to do. Community provides an increased opportunity for collaboration and to participate with community stakeholders. I think, again, just getting out there, working with community members to have a full understanding of what our programming does for students, and then businesses. So this is going to be a really big part of the future with our students, is just providing future workforce with employability skills needed for success. So really having a hand in the outcomes for students, especially when it comes to the workforce and partnering with businesses, et cetera. So there's lots of different facets to a school counseling program. And then just coming back to a little bit of data, in the 2019 survey that we did, it was found that 82% of counseling programs had not yet attained gold star recognition. And so when we created the new Carrying the Torch to Student Success, our goal was to increase the number of schools that were participating in a comprehensive school counseling model. And so through the creation of the Indiana model, the Carrying the Torch platform, we now have 160 schools that are enrolled. And Rebekah and I at the beginning were like, well, if we have like 30, that'll be great. So to see that we have like so many more schools participating is really exciting. But the data also shows that we have 33% of those who completed this survey who don't have a school counseling model at all. And so that's who we're really focused on. Like, you don't necessarily have to go through RAMP or have to go through Carrying the Torch to be working towards a comprehensive school counseling model. You can use little bits and pieces of the framework to really drive your school counseling program. And so that's kind of our goal, is to increase the knowledge of what a comprehensive school counseling program is as a whole. And you can also, if you have a copy of the slides, the Indiana School Counselor Survey that Inspire Success just did for us recently is a great tool for advocacy. So as school counseling leaders, I encourage you to take a look at the survey results and share them as you see fit.
All right, so now that we've reflected on the why, and hopefully that was a refresher for most of us here, but again, I think sometimes with everything else that we're doing in our roles, especially for those of you in leadership at the district level, sometimes we get a little bit removed as to why comprehensive counseling is so important. So now that we know that, like, what do we do with that? How do we get started? That could be, I feel like, the hardest step to take. So as a school counselor leader, we know that you're likely already working with data in your districts regularly, but we wanted to share some options to consider, some other points to maybe reflect on when narrowing in on what's important in supporting relevant goal setting for your programs and also for the counselors that you support and serve. So before we talk about the how of gathering data, why should school counselors or other support professionals need to collect data? I know for me, that was something, even though I know when you were back in grad school, you're talking about comprehensive school counseling programs, I didn't necessarily understand the why at first. And that may be where some of your counselors are, especially as we know that there are new counselors coming into the field all the time. But there are three main reasons that we feel that you should collect data. First, we collect data to inform those stakeholders, as Michelle mentioned, of student needs and to advocate for supports and programming, not only with your administration, but those community partners as well. I often find, or that we find, that seeing those tangible data points on paper is more powerful than just hearing, hey, like, we really need support on mental health, or we really need these things. It's really, again, having those numbers can be powerful. If you share with an administrator or external stakeholder, for example, you feel like more students this year are having issues with peer conflict, they may dismiss it as just a typical developmental issue, or, hey, it's just a busy time of year and that's just a behavior. But again, if you can share those results, like if you do a needs assessment and it comes out that 34% of your students feel that peers do not treat each other with respect, that data point can become more tangible and, again, more importantly, measurable, and you can see your pre and post data. Second, we feel that data can help inform your school and community-based professionals about what current trends and students' areas of need, because that can be different from year to year and even during the time of year. Those trends and student needs, again, are ever changing. We know so from the past few years, and even more so moving forward. And we're still in that pandemic recovery mode, and it's going to be quite some time. So we hope that when you have those trends that you can point out through reviewing your data or through doing a needs assessment. Shameless plug, we do have a free needs assessment in our Carrying the Torch platform that you can use. That can hopefully help you in diving in and gathering that data. Lastly, we hope that using data will help you in streamlining your programming efforts. As I mentioned when we started, we know you're busy, so we want to make sure that you're using your time wisely and that your interventions are effective, and thinking about moving forward what services that you can continue to provide or those that maybe you can omit if they're not working anymore. So in looking at your three main types of data, student achievement data, I know is kind of the big one that we know is the no-brainer. That's your big ticket items. That's what helps you measure your success in your school. We included some options there, and we can talk through those a little bit more in depth. We also want you to take a look at your achievement related data. We know that is impacting your student achievement. When students attend, it's not shocking, and they do their homework and their coursework and outcomes, they just perform better. So we know that that is a big piece of it as well. Well, we also want you to take a look at, regardless of whether you do a comprehensive school counseling program like Michelle mentioned before, taking a look at those standards and competency related data, your ASCA mindsets and behaviors, your school counseling competencies, employability skills. Those are another big piece to take a look at, and we hope that in doing lessons and activities, you can shift and see improvement in those attitudes and outcomes for your students. Your school-wide data, that is a big piece. It can include your attendance rate records, trends, student grades, your test scores, attendance rates, like I mentioned before, and also discipline data. If you weren't aware already, in December, we did launch the new Indiana Graduates Prepared to Succeed dashboard. It's available to the public, and then now you do have probably your administrators or leaders, and you may as well have access to more specific student data through a login. If you have questions about that, we can talk a little bit more about that in the end about that access. But the dashboard was created in response to legislation requiring transparency of school performance data. So it's not something that us as a department decided to create, but I will say we are on the edge of getting that out, rolling it out earlier compared to other states. So we are excited about that. I think it does make data a little bit more accessible to you and to anyone that works in a school. Another good source of data is utilizing those pre and post assessments, like I mentioned before. For school counselors or others that are delivering class lessons or interventions, post-lesson surveys are an easy way to gauge lesson effectiveness and what students learned. Those can be created through a Google Class course, or other student learning management systems use them. We do support that in our Carrying the Torch platform, that we have that pre and post data support that is available for you in creating those surveys. Another idea is to use those universal screeners for pre and post data for mental health professionals or others are already likely doing those in your building if you're working with school social workers or other external stakeholders. So we would recommend collaborating with them as well. Another important piece, lastly, is that anecdotal reports from your staff. Your teachers and staff are on the front lines with your kiddos every day. So again, although we like to have those hard tangible data points, it's okay, again, to ask for feedback of just the pulse of what the class is dealing with or how things are going. So that could be a good opportunity just to get more feedback as well. We would, again, encourage you that important source of data would be to conduct that annual student needs assessment. We know that that can be tricky to do, but it is important to get student feedback and opinions on what their needs are. So we do recommend starting each school year with the student needs assessment. It can be questions as simple as, how well do I keep my school materials organized, or how do I feel connected at school? So there's all kinds of different student needs assessments that you can do on your own, or again, in partnering with other organizations that provide those. Again, as I mentioned, our Carrying the Torch to Student Success program has a free one built into the platform that you can use as well for free. For community data, many local community foundations complete an annual needs assessment already. For example, I live in Hendricks County, and we have a very active community organization that does provide those community assessment results that you can view on their website for free. So you may check and see if somebody is already doing it. If you can borrow that data, that's great. Again, I'm all about working smarter, not harder, especially when it comes to collecting all of the data that's out there. One piece that you can use that we wanted to give you some examples on is that you can use your student information system to track your student services that you provide for better data collection. Michelle and I were at the same conference back in February, and there were some schools that were sharing that they are doing this. And I know Michelle can actually speak a little bit, because they were starting to do it at the school that she was at in her prior role before joining the department. So Michelle, do you want to tag in on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I just thought, just speaking to, counselors, I know sometimes, well, at least maybe it was just me too, is that it's really difficult to have all these multiple systems that you're tracking things in. And so at the high school, we did use PowerSchool to track. Now I know there are some questions about confidentiality. And so those are things that you would have to work out with your school locally to determine what would work for your specific SIS or your specific school population. But I think if you're vague enough, you can really just use little taglines this school created in PowerSchool to differentiate the types of services that you're providing, because I think that does then allow you to see, how many touch points you're having with students. And I think as more and more expectations are placed on us to provide data for how much we're meeting with students, especially with the career college and career readiness space, I think being able to kind of document it in your SIS might be helpful. So just something to consider. Again, there are, you wouldn't want to put any counseling notes specifically in your SIS or anything of that nature. Basically, what I'm saying is exactly what they had here, met academic and then direct counseling or whatever, just so that you're able to kind of see how many students you're meeting, etc. And so it just allows you to provide that data for advocacy purposes, but also to show impact that you're having on your student outcomes. So this is just one example.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, I believe this school was using PowerSchool, but we have heard from other schools that are using other student SIS systems that support this work as well. And I can say I was a school that we were doing it different, but again, it was another thing to log in and track. So it is nice to consider keeping it in one space. And again, that it's visible to your administrators. Now I can say I don't believe teachers could see these. So that's another thing to consider as well. So now that you have all your data, what in the heck do you do with it? And why should you analyze it? So we'll talk about some important things to consider. So analyzing data helps us avoid biases. And I can say, I thought that, oh, wait, I'm above that, but we're all subject to those cognitive biases, and they influence our work. We may think, for example, we know why students are absent. They're not motivated to attend, they're seniors, they're ready to be out the door. But in reality, there may be other reasons. I had a senior I was working with when I was in the field last that they were late all the time, and it seemed to happen right when they got their driver's license. But really it was mom got a new job and younger sibling didn't have a way to school. And so if we sit down, if we just look at the data point, then we think, oh, they're just tardy because they got their license. But again, there could be more reasons to it. We hope that in analyzing your data, that you can promote better outcomes for students. Again, just keep those few priority points and goals in mind. That will help us be more focused in our efforts. For your program goals that you determine by analyzing your data, those can remain the same or change depending on your program's vision and mission statements. And also, again, those demonstrated needs for students year to year. So just some things to consider when you're analyzing your data. For school counseling programs, we know per ASCA, our outcome goals should focus on achievement, attendance, or discipline. But why those three areas? I don't think it's surprising that research shows that if students are in school more and their attendance is better, it improves their academic achievement. And also their positive behavior typically equals more positive outcomes. But in Indiana, our school counseling competencies also promote a focus on college and career readiness, as Michelle mentioned. And it's also a priority for the new Graduates Prepared to Succeed dashboard. So those are also things to consider when you're analyzing your data and trying to find those priority points for your programming moving forward. We know that students cannot be their best academically or likely plan for the future, though, if they don't have that overall positive well-being. So we do consider that a priority in those counseling domains. And again, when you're analyzing your data. So we want you to start with the positive. I could think, again, with data, it can be challenging sometimes to just see those big glaring points that you want to move, but we want you to consider flipping that around a little bit. What's working well for your programming for your school? We want you to review those achievement, attendance, and discipline data points, whatever reports you may have identified when you were looking through things or priority points. Again, it can be from our new GPS dashboard. But again, I think one thing to keep in mind, you don't need to track or look at everything. And that's where sometimes, again, I'm like, let's just conquer the world and fix it all. But it's good to really select 2 or 3 measures within your data points and reviewing those subgroups. For example, when you're looking at your achievement data, such as benchmark or standardized test results, you might narrow it down further to a specific grade level or group of students. So next, then we'll flip to those possible areas of need when you're looking at your school data reports. Again, make sure to look at that disaggregated data for discrepancies by the subgroup or categories that you're looking at. You'll want to consider your school's demographic makeup. You can use that information to compare your data for those specific student subgroups. For example, if your school's population includes 15% English language learners, but those students represent more than half of your students that are retained, that would be a significant overrepresentation. So that would be something to consider when you're looking at your goals. We encourage you also to refer or support your school organization's improvement goals, as those have already been deemed a priority by your administration. So I think the more as school counselors we can lean into those priority points, again, we can advocate for the importance of our role in our school and our community as well. So what else do we need to know? Remember to look at your school's data and compare it to district and state data. I will say one of the positives of the new GPS dashboard is that you have that readily in advance. You will see actually little target points that will show where your school is compared to overall state data. So I think that's important to help you when you're looking at those priorities for your school, but also for our state as well. So look at those big major trends or needs and consider those in supporting your counselors as they're thinking about their priority points and programming moving forward. The last piece that you can use or think about is you can also use that supplemental data to get more information. And we covered a couple of those things already. So now that we've talked all about gathering data and analyzing your data, what are the main things to consider? So if you've tuned me out, hop back in. Finally, you'll identify and prioritize a few data points you can address through your program. And I think that's the most important piece, is that we know that there's going to be data points out there that are concerning that we need to consider, but you want to really think about where your counseling department can make those impacts and support the work. So we don't want you to get lost in too many data points. You'll most likely be less effective if you do that. So just select those few that, again, you know that you can support, you can be more intentional with, and you can focus on delivering those targeted interventions. So the last thing I want to leave you with when it comes to data is just seeing it in action. This is, Michelle and I were at the National School Counseling Leadership Conference in February, and this was a great example from a school. So you can see here their sample district goal, their overall district goal was to provide and support a relevant and rigorous curriculum based on, I changed it to Indiana, but based on state standards to improve student learning and increase in achievement. So this was actually a small group lesson. You can see their objectives here, where after this lesson, you'll be able to create a goal for improving your grades, explain at least 3 ways to reach your goal, and importantly, identify an adult at home and an adult at school to help you reach your goal, and then how to check grades online. So you can see the student reflection after the activity here, that they were able to say, "Dear family, I'm writing you because I attended a lunch workshop with my school counselor to check my grades and work on improving." And then the students were able to set their goal, talk about their 2 action steps, or if they had more than that, and then also getting that parent buy-in of how can they support them in reaching the goal. And then on the far right, you can see here as the school counseling department, they were able to show that after delivering this lesson that they had a 60% reduction in D's and a 49% reduction in D's and F's for both 7th and 8th grade students. So that's a great advocacy tool to move forward to say, hey, look, we were really able to impact student achievement directly from our efforts as a counseling department. So now that we've talked all about data, how can we take this data and use that to build awareness with administration about what your program, your school counseling programs do? So I'll hand it over to Michelle to lead the charge on that topic.
Yes, absolutely. So building awareness with your administration, this was something that we actually talked a lot about when we were reworking Carrying the Torch, is because so often the school counselor knows how to improve their school counseling program, but they really need the buy-in from their administration to make it happen. And so I think it's really important to consider leadership in your school or your school district to see how they can assist you in building your comprehensive school counseling program and just really doing a lot of the things that Rebekah and I are talking about today. And so that starts with, communication with your administration. And so you can go ahead to the next slide, Rebekah.
No, you're fine. Hit the button, but I didn't hit it hard enough.
Well, sometimes it's like delayed too.
Yeah.
So I did find there was a College Board survey in 2008, which is extremely dated, but it's the most recent one that I could find. But the areas that are critical for an effective principal-counselor relationship. But I also think that, again, it's really important to kind of think and strategize about how you're going to build this relationship, because I think that it's really like sometimes I see kind of that like negative, counselor thinks this, admin thinks this. Is not always like that, but I think it's important that we try to shift the narrative, because a lot of the things that school counselors are expected to do impact the school principal and their school's data. So we've got to work together to meet the needs of the school district as a whole. So number one, creating that mutual trust and respect. So you want to make sure that your voice is heard alongside your administrator. You want to improve those communication points, so provide opportunities for sharing information, providing input for student strategies that are related to student outcomes. And so that's something that I've really learned in my work that I do at the state level as well, is that being able to have that direct correlation to student outcomes, because even at the state level, they want to see like how we're making an impact in very specific, like academics, college and career readiness, school discipline. Like they want to see those data improve as a result of the work that we're doing as a school counselor. So really being able to come to the table with improved student outcomes can be helpful. And a shared vision and decision making. So making sure that you kind of agree upon the direction and ideas for student success. So just finding the time to, you know, is it having a meeting with your principal once a week? Is it we in the carrying the torch, there is an administrative conference that needs to occur that we help you provide a specific report to bring to the table for leadership that has data points to share. But it's really critical to have those conversations and to really have them regularly to ensure success for your students. So just building that relationship. And one thing too to think about is that you want to come to the table like with solutions, not problems. And I think that sometimes as counselors, you know, we get frustrated because things are difficult sometimes. But if you go to your administrator constantly with problems, it doesn't change things. It just makes the principal feel frustrated, and they already have a lot going on in their head and on their plate. So coming with the mindset of solutions to concerns or problems is such a better way to kind of share that or to start that relationship, an open line of communication. And then next is advocacy for the school counseling role. And I honestly have had to do that, I think, in every single role that I've been a school counselor. Maybe not as much when I first started, because obviously I was new to the role and I was just happy to be there. But as I participated in, you know, ASCA and ISCA and in recognizing that the profession really needed that advocacy piece, I became a little bit of a louder voice. And so one thing that you can do is use social media to promote your program, the department, and all the things that you do to help students. So you know, what does that look like? Twitter or school Facebook, or having a newsletter, creating graphics in Canva, highlighting, you know, using photography, working with your school's comms department if they have one, just making sure that you're doing the communication in a way that shines a bright light on the counseling program as a whole. That also helps with transparency with parents, so that they know you, they see your face, and just sharing the good things that you're doing. Providing professional development to your school staff on what is the role of a school counselor. I actually did a presentation at a PLC, like we had an e-learning day, and typically all of the e-learning sessions were devoted to teacher academic type sessions. And so I advocated that our school counselors start kind of doing presentations as well. So we did one just on the role of a school counselor, and we used the ASCA's appropriate and inappropriate duties of a school counselor. And it really opened the eyes, I think, to teachers of all the things that we actually do. You know, we're not just like sitting in our desk waiting for crisis situations to occur, twiddling our thumbs. Like, we really have a lot of roles and responsibilities that throughout the school day. Changing the language from guidance counselor to school counselor, like that's always a big thing. Indiana actually changed the definition to school counselor like years ago, but still find leaders and administrators saying guidance counselor. Not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but it definitely, our role has evolved, and so it's important to share that information. Staying present. So really, you know, if you work for a school or you work in a leadership leadership position, like, are you attending school functions and activities in the same way that your teacher friends are showing up, the admin are showing up, going in the hallways, greeting students, participating in student clubs, going into the classroom? Like, it's really easy, especially at high school, I noticed, like, for you to just be like who is that? Like you really have to be present in the school, especially if it's a big school. And so getting out to be with the students more often really helped the buy-in with our program. School committees, so after school committees like MTSS or oh gosh, name some other ones, but just having a role in the school, not just, leaving that to the teachers. Again, appropriate duties of a school counselor, sharing that with your leadership. And then again, like Rebekah said, sharing as much data as possible. One of the things that we do in Carrying the Torch is we suggest an end of the year report, which really highlights like what you as a school council, or it could be your program as a whole, like how many students do you see in the year? Like what club, like what groups are you running? And just showing that data on a year-to-year basis, and then sharing that with your stakeholders. So whether that's your school leadership team, your school board, and just being proud of the work that you're doing using data. Again, and I kind of talked about this in my other slide, I jumped ahead, but just creating a working relationship built on respect and trust. So having that open communication with your school leadership is so important. Oftentimes school leaders in the school counseling, like I said, like there are things that are high stakes that fall on the counselor's plate. And so you have to have a clear relationship of like, what's the role of the administrator? What is your role? Setting time to meet weekly or bi-weekly with a formal meeting time with your administrator, being a part of that leadership team, and then working together to have that annual administrative conference to go over the goals of your comprehensive school counseling program. And so an annual administrative conference, like I said, that is something that is in a comprehensive school counseling program. And it is something that we talk about in the Carrying the Torch program, but really it allows you to start the start of the school year. And you have to have your administrative conference within 2 months of the start of the school year for Ask a Ramp and for Carrying the Torch. But that ensures that you're having this conference early so that you can share the goals for your school counseling program, show how they connect to your school improvement goals and your school's mission and vision statements. You can talk about what resources you need to meet your goals. That's one thing, and just doing some review, like a lot of counselors are like, well, we don't have a school counseling budget, or we have $50 or something like that. And like, that's fine if that's what your current school is budgeting for school counseling. But to me, that shows that you have not like outlined all of the things that your program needs to be successful and what that truly costs, and being open with your administration of what you need to have a successful comprehensive school counseling program. Again, looking at those appropriate and inappropriate counselor duties. I think in a perfect world, we're not going to be able to get all the things off of our plate. But I've seen instances where school counselors have done advocacy correctly. Instead of coming with a problem, they've come with a solution, and they've managed to get things like 504s off their plate, or special ed conference paring, or things that were really taking up a huge chunk of the school counselor's time, and not really allowing them to, move the needle on those student outcomes. So they were shifted to other responsibilities. I even, like in the middle school that I worked in prior to the high school, I was building the master schedule, and the current principal actually started to recognize that it is a lot of work to build a master schedule. And so came alongside the school counselor and realized that it is not a counselor duty, and actually took that off the school counselor's plate, which is amazing, because really it's not, it's something that is just always been done a certain way, but it really wasn't working in that school setting. So having those conversations can go a long way. And then that just discussed looking at your data, your goals, your action plan, your use of time. That's a huge one too. We do have a use of time tracker in Carrying the Torch to student success, but as much as I loathe having, it is not my favorite thing, even as someone who works for the state, tracking my time, it just seems tedious, but it's the only way that can really show, to provide that data for your administration to hopefully shift your priorities. And so I don't think it has to be done every day, all day, but at least a chunk of your time if you're trying to use it as an advocacy tool. So also sorry, my daughter's homesick, so she's joining me. The advisory council is a huge one too. Having the buy-in with your stakeholders, your community stakeholders, is so key. Like, we are doing a lot of work with work-based learning, employability skills, and so you're going to have to go out into the community and build those relationships. And I think the more people that you have as a part of your advisory council can be really beneficial as you support your school counseling program. And then last but not least, I do want to highlight our Carrying the Torch to Student Success program. So I know some of you already are participating, and so this is not new to you, but for those that are online that are listening to this, I do want to make you aware that we have this platform. It is free. We are providing professional development to cohorts. So we're wrapping up the first year of our first 2-year cohort, but I think we're also looking to start another one. So if you're interested in building a comprehensive program and doing it through Carrying the Torch and earning that Gold Star, Silver Star award, that this is a great tool to utilize. I'm really proud of the work that Inspire Success has done for us. Like, there's no way that the department could have created such a useful tool just like on our own. But it's everything you would want and need to build a comprehensive school counseling program, and it's all free. So definitely want you to check it out if you're not participating. And then on the next slide, you can kind of see our Carrying the Torch to Student Success. We currently have 3 levels. So the first level is the Bronze Star, and that's something that you can do if you just want to like dip your toes into comprehensive school counseling. So maybe you're you're not only the leader in your school counseling program, but you're the only school counselor, and you just kind of want to see what it's like. That's a great place to start. And then Silver Star kind of takes you through the assessment, building your mission vision, creating some goals, looking at interventions, but it doesn't quite take you to the full Gold Star until you are really like then analyzing your data. So Gold Star really is where you're going to analyze your data, create results, reports, and evaluate the current programming that you have so that you can do it all over again. And our goal with Carrying the Torch was not to add work to school counselors' plates, but I think when you're intentional about doing the work to create a comprehensive school counseling program, I think everything is just going to move smoother in your department. So you'll get to the point eventually where it's not like constantly like reactive, that you're doing more work that is proactive. And that's what we're seeing a lot right now is like, we talk about MTSS and we're seeing flipped triangles. So there's so many like students that are in crisis that the infrastructure can't handle it because the prevention work isn't being done, the goal setting isn't being done, because you're constantly putting out fires, and that's not anyone's fault. I think nobody has the time to actually sit down and do the programming. And so being intentional about it will help set your program up for success so that you can slowly flip the triangle so that you're doing more prevention work, you're setting goals for students, and you have less students in that tier 3 needing referrals and et cetera. And so that's all we had for you today. I'll let Amanda wrap us up, but definitely if you guys have any questions about Carrying the Torch, about data, about building relationships, like Rebekah and I would love to chat with you on how we can support your school counseling program.
Thank you both. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Rebekah, for being with us and for sharing this great information. PowerPoint will be available, obviously, to you. You have the slide deck, and this is being recorded. So we will post this to the Counselor Connect playlist in the Keep Indiana Learning YouTube channel. So if you need to access it later, or if you want to share this with some colleagues, you could pass it along. I did link in the chat the session evaluation, which is very short, just a few questions. And it also, if you fill it out, you'll be able to request professional growth plan points. So be sure to please fill that out. And then Rebekah, if you want to go to the next slide, there are a couple of upcoming events I wanted to share with you. We have actually, oh, that's formatting is a little weird. Sorry about that. But we do have tomorrow, we have a free virtual session, which is self-care in a selfless field. So if you want to check that out, Jennifer will be sharing us kind of some information about self-care planning, which I think as we go into the summer, we'll hopefully all be doing a little bit of self-care, but this will be a good kickstart to that. Also, virtually different summer conference is in June. Registration is open for that. It's only $35, and the sessions will be recorded and available through June of next year, so June of 2024. So if you are enjoying your summer and cannot attend those sessions live, you can access them later on. And then I also wanted to share with you that we have a couple of things happening for our counselor leaders. I mentioned in the beginning, we are having a year-long series for people in counselor leadership positions. Registration for that will be posted in the very near future, probably sometime this month before school gets out. And that will include one in-person workday with presenters and from Hatching Results, followed by monthly virtual check-ins for the school counselor leadership cadre. When you register for that, if you register for that, we will also ask those of you to volunteer to mentor a new counselor. So a counselor in their first or second year. Next school year, that will be kind of a part of the agreement when you sign up, that you will also serve as a mentor. So if that's something you're interested in, you know, just look for that information to come in an upcoming newsletter, and be sure to register, as space will be limited for that. I am actually going to share with you too. Let me get you the link. If you are interested in being a mentor, but maybe you're not going to sign up for the cadre, there is a mentor interest form. Let me just link that into the chat as well. I think that's it. And then you can fill that out. It's just a very short Google form. So regardless of whether or not you join the school counselor leadership cadre, anybody, you don't have to necessarily be a counselor leader. Any counselor who's been practicing in the field for a few years can sign up to be a mentor. With that, I'm going to open it up. If anybody has any questions, then we can get those answered. Otherwise, we appreciate you joining us today.